I think our intent right now is just to find groups that are interested that can help us develop it from a research perspective. None of them really offered any budgets for development, which is fine because we're not really at that point yet. We still need to do some validation of some ideas here, but we just haven't been able to put that combination of groups together to help us do some more research and validation. So
And
we'll see where it goes.
The idea right now is really pertinent because it's about giving kids options for being able to be active. The whole physical education in the virtual world, though our question in the beginning was, where does that go? And I think it's still a compelling idea, right, Ken?
Right. And what's interesting was that when we started the idea, using Zoom for a lot of people, especially kids, was still somewhat foreign. But within 2 or 3 months, everybody was not only using Zoom, but using it in a classroom situation. And then just in the last couple of months, all of us on Playdate have seen all of these Zoom play dates effectively, where PE classes or sports clubs or just kids wanting to get together to play or exercise together are spontaneously creating Zooms to do just that. So that tells us that the idea behind Playdate is solid. So for us now, it's okay, well, how can we take Playdate and make it that thing that people just think of instead of just thinking, oh, well, I'll just put something together on Zoom in an ad hoc fashion. Playdate can become that place to go when you want to do something like that in Zoom, but it's already built and ready for people to create that kind of activity.
So it just needs to come further along.
Yeah.
That sounds like the interest is there. For those of you just joining, we're talking about something that came from GVDS 4, the Playdate concept that where we were talking about the previous networking call that we had earlier, where Americo has been doing a lot of work. He's called the Energizer Bunny around the kind of stuff that he's been doing. And I originally set up the call so that all of us can meet. Now, the four that first connected, Sachin, you were the person that people were like, who's this person that joined? So maybe it's apropos that you give yourself a kind of an introduction to everybody else and who you are and what you did in the last GVDS and anything else you'd like to talk. And then from there, we can kind of go for other people.
Yeah. So as you know, my name is Sachin. I'm from India, New Delhi. So I met Robert, I think last in April. I think April, May, when you were starting your mastery program. At that, I joined it and I know more about you. I know more about you from the Nikhil also, because he based in Bangalore, and that time I was learning this print, and that's how I know about you. Yeah,
you don't want to know anything else about me beyond that. It's like it's harmful to your health if you get anywhere near that.
Yeah. So with that, I am a PG in design for digital experience with 10 years of experience in majorly in UX, and with majorly I work with the startups in India. With that, I am I am majorly start my all major projects with the workshops. So recently I came to know virtual workshops, which you can say I have started after talking to you guys or after learning from you. Then I introduced my life with Myro also. Now I am kind of is okay to facilitate the kind of workshop remotely. So these are the few things from perspective to GDVS or remotely and all those things. Anything specifically if you want to ask, I'm okay to answer your questions. Yeah.
My only question for you right now, and then we can expand on it later, is what's your current learning curve, like your major learning curve? What are you spending time on to kind of learn more about?
Workshops. 100% from last 3 months, I'm majorly dedicated to workshops. In my company, I have almost run within a month, 1.5 months, 9 workshops with my team. Wow. 9 workshops. Yeah. I am just training them on the workshops. That's it.
I was
So
gonna
my
say
core.
you had that Zoom tan. Like if you spend so much time in front of a monitor, you have this like
Yeah.
blue sheen that comes out there. I mean, Florian, you
Yeah.
can tell from his background, he's done so many of these that he's pretty much turned his background blue so that you can't tell how often he does them.
So morning and evening time is just training or the team. That's it. I'm not so trained, but yeah, I'm whatever I know, I'm just passing to them. That's it. That's why I came here to learn from you guys. Yeah.
Okay. Is there someone
Yeah.
else on the call that you see on the screen that you'd like to have do an introduction that you haven't met yet?
I am. I met Abhinav. I know Yasir. Whenever you come into the dash, Yasir was the guy who is helping you. I know Florian somehow a bit, not to Kane and Nora, not as such.
Oh. Well, let's go bell bottom and let's have Nora introduce herself to everybody. How about that? So Nora, give us a Cliff Note version of what you're all about.
That's all.
I don't think your microphone's working. Oh, no,
Is it on now? Is it working
now?
now?
It's on. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
I came to GVDS last fall, fell into this crowd, and the question is, how do you get practice doing sprints? And last fall, I jumped in and cleared my calendar and gave the time and met an amazing group of people, which spurred me on to bring my own work to GVDS, which is with increasing the social impact for women's health and sexual wellness and in femtech, and worked through last winter doing quite a few lightning decision jams and problem framing sessions, and we got a really great team together because of this platform you've created, Robert. And again, met a lot of great people doing that femtech sprint, and we actually created a product called Pleasure Adventure, which kind of is just sitting there for now. Lisa in the last call said, she did all this work and then she was a little bit of an ostrich, in the sand, and then came back. And that's what I feel like. I had to take a break after, running my own sprint, working with Ken on, and what were we, potato heads or something, and potato dogs, and also working on another team. So I kind of chilled for June, but in July I got a contract back in some work that I'm also qualified to do as instructional design, and started working with a college, and I'm really happy to be back doing that work because it's such a new day. So much is happening that couldn't have happened before when I was a lead senior instructional designer in the past. So I'm still working with Femtech. Alexander Brock and I connected, and we are running a series of lightning decision jams to really ideate through Femtech, wanting to bring 5 Femtech founders to light through the process, and really being able to be agile using the dash and using prototyping as we go through. And very happy to be at GVDS and meet all of you and work again. It's been a great experience.
So like I was asking Sachin, what's your major learning curve that you're on right now? What are you spending a lot of time like learning about?
Back into education, I have a really great foundation about pedagogy and what's going on, but really starting to juggle so many tools, because everyone's just going out and trying to use whatever they can. And so I'm juggling with those tools, but also I think in the last call, people were talking about sales and being able to really move forward your business in a way. And I think the thing I struggle with sometimes is in this time of the pandemic, I'm alone here, right? And having this community to connect with is really important. It's not really, connection's not a learning curve for me, but continuing it and putting myself out there. Sometimes like after May, I felt so raw of putting myself out and out and out, and really being able to continue an authentic connection with the people that I'm connecting with out there. Not a huge, doesn't have to be huge, but really meaningful, authentic connection. Because for me, it's about bringing creative action to change the world, you know, so one step at a time, right?
Yeah, I hear you.
And wanting to bring diverse people together. So bringing artists, bringing engineers, bringing facilitators, bringing more people to the group. So we're not just making the same thing again, right? So we truly do innovate.
Yep. Yep. I hear you. Okay. So you're up in terms of passing the baton to someone else on the call that you have not met or seen before. So that'll give you some insight into what they're all about. I think Sachin's already kind of given his introduction as like a rabid workshopper or somebody that's very much involved with doing a lot of workshops. So who else would have you not met or not worked with that you'd like to kind of get an introduction from?
I think someone just went away, but Yasir, I have not met you, Yasir. What is for you? What is happening for you?
Stone Cold.
Hi, yeah. So this is Stone Cold Steve Austin. I mean, I have the name. Florian has the look. So we are
There you go.
we are a tag team over here. So
yeah, you're the wrestling. You're the guy, the wrestling psychic coach, and then Florian's the one that goes in the ring and just knocks everybody over with spears and everything else. Exactly. I got it. Yeah.
Exactly. So I encourage him to go, and I stand outside.
Yes, and then you illegally do things like distract the referee while Florian hit somebody with a chair while no one's looking. Yeah, I see what's going on.
So I'm also from India, but I'm born and brought up in Saudi Arabia, so I've pretty much lived all my life over here. My background is into software development, so I've been developing for more than 10 years. Then now I was leading a team of around 10 developers we have like web applications internally for our company organization. Then now I've moved into Agile, so I'm a Scrum Master and an Agile coach. For me, design, GVDS 4 was the first introduction with design sprints. I mean, it came at a very appropriate time for me because I had just finished the AJ and Smart Masterclass. So, and as Nora said, I was also looking for opportunities to practice. So it just came at the right time. So I just, it was a great experience knowing people and actually going through the process and implementing it. Then after GVDS, I tried a few Facebook groups where we had, we're practicing online design sprints, which, some of them went really well. For me, the challenge is, as Robert was mentioning, the learning curve here is, because my day job is Agile coach and Scrum Master, so it also involves facilitation. And a lot of the focus is on team building because with our organization, all these teams were built just like less than a year back. So, everyone is new to Agile. So to really get those, self-organizing teams and being truly Agile. So that has been the focus for me. So, I have taken the ideas of doing workshops rather than, trainings or anything, just using workshops more. So, and that is giving a lot of good results. So and our organization, we have a very dedicated design thinking and design sprints or sub-organization within it. So as I already shared with Robert, I'm trying to look for opportunities to get into that. So let's see. It was more very sort of a physically co-located team in Sweden. But now with the COVID situation, they are more open to doing remote design sprints. So that's my opportunity.
The way that the GVDS 5 is looking up, it's going to be 2 tracks. One is going to be on the virtual design sprint side, but it's going to be more of a simulation than the promise of possibly taking what comes out of that into a product. The reason is that the educational component of it has always been there, and it's been kind of, well, sometimes it's emphasized and sometimes it isn't. This time around, I'm disproportionately putting a lot of energy into kind of creating a free nucleus that where all of it's up on YouTube. It's going to be on the website where people can watch the educational stuff I'll put out specifically about virtual design sprints. But the idea is that you're going to learn the process by doing, so that if there is something at the end that's inspirational, you can take it forward in whatever fashion you have. But the dash is going to be specifically around taking a potential product market fit, like service concept, whatever you got, and putting it through the paces quickly and cheaply so that you can see if there's any initial interest in the market that you could potentially carry forward, because at least the evidence suggests that if that second track is purposeful in that regard, it manifests into some things that drive people to do more work in relation to like furthering it along a bit. At least that's the idea.
Good.
All right, Yasir, who on this call is somebody that you have not met before that you'd like to hear more about?
So I think Florian, I have attended a lot of sessions with him, so I think I know him well. With Ken, I think so. I attended a few online sessions, but maybe I did not interact. So maybe Ken, you can give us an introduction of yourself.
Okay, thank you. I'm Ken. I'm a designer, creative director, and got my start years and years and years ago as a graphic designer, and slowly progressed into digital design, UX, UI, and about 7-8 years ago, got very much into design thinking, and for a time was involved in a local chapter of Open IDEO, which opened my eyes to workshops, human-centered design, and so forth. And it helped that I'm in San Diego, and so had frequent contact with people like Don Norman and the design lab here at UC San Diego. So it helped that there was a great community here in San Diego for this kind of work. But what I noticed over the last few years is most of that effort was put towards product development, and which is fine locally, but I was more interested in the idea of virtual sprints and design sprints and brand sprints and so on outside of product development. So when GVDS came along, for me anyhow, last year, 3.0, I signed up, and it was pretty much what I was looking for, was to find other people, especially around the world, who wanted to use the frameworks for something that could be for product design, but it could be something entirely different. So that gave me an opportunity to meet people like Robert and Nora and a whole bunch of people. So it's been huge for me. I've really enjoyed it. And for a lot of the reasons that Nora mentioned as well is just to meet people and have other experiences and develop those relationships. So I did 4.0 also, did a couple of challenges earlier this year in 4.0, and I'm looking forward to it again. And everything you've said, Robert, about what you want 5.0 to be is matches with what I have been looking for also. So I'm glad to see it's constantly evolving and not just being the same thing over and over again. Otherwise, I probably would not have signed up again, because although, you know, I love finding new people to work with and having these opportunities, if it had been just the same thing over again, I don't know. I don't know if I would have signed up again, but I'm really looking forward to kind of a fresh take on all of this and learning more about Dash as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't have done it in the first place if it's just a repeat. It doesn't interest me much. I'd much rather try to say, okay, what have we learned? What are people telling me that they want to do more or less of, and try to build upon that. So it's not about finding the right formula, so it's a plug and play every 3 or 6 months. It's what seems to be moving in the zeitgeist around design thinking and facilitation and design, and how people are kind of working in these realms. And for me, prototyping was like a natural fit for a lot what was coming out of this event. So yeah, I hear you. And a couple little known facts about Ken. One is that he holds the unsaid record in GVDS for the most introductions done on a Zoom call.
That can't be right. That can't be right.
You've been. Maybe it's with me, but I just remember call. It's like, okay, Ken, you're going to introduce yourself, and you're like, okay, take 11, and then it was like, okay, I've been an IDEO, I've been doing this, so.
Yeah, that actually rings true. When my name was just called, I'm like, Oh, okay. What is my script here? I should be able to just recall it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also he was, I think out of everyone on the call, you're the best of the best from GVDS 4. You were one of the 3 that were nominated by others, like other practitioners, not me. I'm not the person that goes, hey, you are good. It's more like everyone else came together and said, you know, you really did a hell of a job last time. So I think it should be noted. And when I have a chance, especially in those introductions, to point that out, because that was a lot of work you did and probably still do in relation to some of that stuff.
Well, I appreciate that. It was honestly a huge surprise for me, but very much appreciated. And, you know, it's great to get an award like that. But the fact is, I think I just got some really good teams and some really good people to work with, and that made all the difference.
Yeah. Yeah, that's always the challenge for me as an organizer. It's like to try to find the right mold. Although I'm going to change the way I'm building teams around this time around, so it's less like seeing all the structure and putting in. I'm still using data, but I'm going to kind of blend in a bit of kind of here's who people that kind of sync up with your calendar. Are there names for people that have been this before that you definitely want to get together with rather than doing it through a forum? So that's more organic in that regard. And then people can kind of latch on depending on these networking events and their impressions on LinkedIn. So yeah, but I'm right there with you about changing it up every time. In fact, the label GVDS is going to change and going into next year. So it's not going to be just on design sprint, so to speak. It's going to actually evolve into other things. So it's going to be more about process and how to get to where you need to go from in a whole series of different ways. So the dash is kind of an introduction to that kind of portfolio of different options. And that's just going to continue on. So it's going to be a slight rebrand, but it'll basically take a flavor where it's like, okay, if you want to learn these things, this is a smaller, more in-depth program where there's just one or 2 weeks of activity, but the rest of it is understanding, getting perspective, doing research, really understanding the space. And I think it's almost in a way, Sachin, it's kind of oriented towards workshopping in a way that kind of gives you like the depth and breadth of everything that needs to be done for an event where you, or an effort where you have to kind of do this. So I think that's where it's going. We have a person that's observing us. His name's Jesse Van Os, and I've talked to him offline about the GVDS. His question was, what's the scale of this sprint? As a recent grad, I'm looking for ways to practice what I've learned in my HCI degree, and I'm looking to get into UX research. Now, rather than me being a talking head, does anybody want to take on this question? No?
I'm not sure what's meant by the scale of this sprint.
I think he's wondering, like, is it so? The event is billed as kind of like from October 5th to the 30th. So sometimes people get the impression that it's one long sprint that happens all the way through, but really it's 1 week of activity where we're capping it at 90 minutes online, like during that particular week. But the offline is what you make of it, or what you have time for. So Jesse, do you want to clarify what you mean by scale of the sprint, and we can re-engage the question? You can do it that way. And while that's happening, Florian, why don't you give yourself an introduction, because you've been patiently waiting for like the better part of half an hour, and you look like you have a lot to say. So please let everyone now on the call know what you're all about.
Yeah, keep it short as always. Huh?
We can't hear you, Florian.
Oh, seriously?
It's low.
I mean, it's very low. Yeah.
It sucks. I'm sorry. Is that better?
Oh,
yeah, that works. We can hear you.
I don't know, my microphone just doesn't matter. Technique, huh? So I keep it short as always. Hi, Florian. So I'm not a designer. My background is an engineer. So I worked in the industry for long and did like project management and innovation. I started with innovation. And before, so I did a lot of innovation workshops, a little bit of design thinking and other processes. Yeah, and with the crisis with COVID, I kind of started doing stuff remote, and somehow I had a lot of time, and I somehow scrolled through and I found Robert's GVDS. So I did the fourth was my first one. I had the design sprint book for about 2 years in my shelf, you know, I just screwed it up, but I had no really clue about it. So, and that was quite a really nice experience. And that's, you know, like you said already, there were a lot of very interesting people. I learned a lot. Like the first week, I think I was totally done because I had no clue what you actually were doing. was totally lost, but that went better. So yeah, there were a lot of learnings and it was a lot of fun. And that's, yeah, that's why I'm back again, right? Because like I said, it's always something new. You learn always something, you meet awesome people, you get good connections. Yeah, that's what I'm here for again. Yeah. What are my challenges, you ask, right? What I figured in the last, so I also do like a lot of workshops. I'm starting to do a lot of remote workshops, a lot, and trying to keep it also get companies going, right? They now getting kind of more open to do remote workshops, so that is quite nice. But what I figured is like the human connection is very difficult on remote workshops. Like to get this, is it, you call it human connection, right?
Yeah.
So personal. And this is something where I'm just at the moment looking a little bit what there's possible, because, you know, you have to keep the workshop short, but if you just do it short and make it tuck, 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 you somehow don't get these nice coffee breaks. And I think this is a huge challenge. I'm looking for how to find the good, nice solutions. So that would be something I'm really in. And as you said, sales. So actually, I tried to do your masterclass, right? But I totally screwed up because, you know, I just dived away in like August because I had figured out I have to do a cut now just to get off the fucking screen. Sorry. You know,
Well, there goes the explicit tag on YouTube. There it goes. You just.
That's the Stone Cold Steve Austin coming in.
Yes. Well, we didn't have the beep. That's all.
Yeah.
Otherwise, well, this is like the non-filtered one.
Yeah. So, but now I'm quite ready to come back. I'll be back. Yeah. That's
The mastery stuff that happened over the summer was kind of like a grand experiment in a couple of things, but it was also to see where the interest was. I think where I didn't go well is the formalization of the process, where there's the expectation that there was educational material that would correspond to every single one rather than having it built out on its own. So it's one of those things where it requires dedicated time to develop what needs to be done rather than kind of getting people together and working on it. So lesson learned in that regard. So it's not just really just saying mastery program, let's all practice. It's more, it kind of needs a formal structure. So going to rewind on that and then basically go, okay, maybe there's value in kind of combining what I'm thinking about doing with the next event in 2021 and kind of doing through this formal process where there is learning, then there's practice, and then there's actual application. So you go through like 3 different phases. And then just depending on where you are in your aptitude, you just engage at those certain times. So if you're fresh off what you're doing and you don't know anything about it, then the first part's definitely where you start. If you know about it, but you maybe have a masterclass certificate and you just haven't had practice, then the second part is there. But something like that, where there's different engagement levels depending on your aptitude and what you do, but the whole stream is learning by doing. But having that framework for people to kind of engage where it makes sense to do is where I think I need to get better at. So yeah. Hey, I'm all about humility. I'm not somebody that goes like, it was fantastic. I don't know what people are thinking. No, it's not like that. So Florian, beyond who's made introductions, is there anyone on the call that you don't recognize? So the only thing people are love to hear, Yasir and Abhinav, who's playing hide and seek with Zoom. He's trying to get his
Abhinav. I think I can. Abhinav, could you just say a few things about you? That would be awesome.
There you go. The man who has the ability to disappear completely into his into his background. He's the magic man. Yeah, that's right.
Magic man.
In India, we call them Mr. India, because there was a movie where Mr. India would disappear and use those powers.
We have our nickname now, Mr. India.
Mr. India. Yeah.
Or Magic Man. You can have both. It works.
Hi all, Abhinav here from New Delhi. I'm not sure if you can see the video. I'm having some challenges with my internet today. So I'll give a quick introduction of what I do and why I'm here. So to give a background, I work with Sachin in the same organization currently, and frankly, Sachin is the guy who managed to get me back here. I was part of the first GVDS, I guess, but didn't graduate out of the program for some reasons. I guess I lost interest or dropped out or something otherwise happened. I don't remember at this point. But I was frankly intrigued by what Robert was doing and the program and the amount of what you can say interaction that the program and the amount of height that was getting done in the program. And this is a space that I want to explore, but I'm not pretty much sure that how to get into this particular space of doing virtual design sprints and virtual collaborations. And primarily, my work has been around doing product design. that too into the UI and UX space, more towards the user interface side, using the principles of user experience. And that is what I've done in the last 10 years primarily.
Okay. And if you were to project out a sort of learning curve that you would have in the future, what would you want to kind of ride, or what's your major learning curve that you're going on?
Right. From a learning perspective here, this year I had the opportunity to do a lot of workshops on design thinking. I participated in a few. Currently, I'm also enrolled into a few global design thinking sprints at this point. And so the basic idea is that how to, as a UX designer or as a UXer, how do you merge these three concepts of doing the general UCD processes that we have in UX, the design thinking process that we have, which actually allows us to innovate, and how do we collaborate in a design sprint and use the principles of user experience as well as design thinking and innovate rapidly in a short sprint. That coupled with the COVID situation, that we now have to do all of this in the remote setting. So that's the major area that I'm looking to in terms of solving. And alongside that, what I want to do is that since I'm pursuing psychology, I want to understand that as a psychology, what is its impact on a contributor or on an entrepreneur or whoever is working as a stakeholder in the design sprint process. What is its psychological impact? You have to process so much of information in a limited amount of time. How do you keep yourself motivated? How do you keep yourself energized? How do you share the same thought in that limited space, along with all the challenges of communication, creativity, and the everyday day-to-day operations of the sprint.
All right, so get all of that done by the end of October, if you could. When you come up with your solutions, I want you to make sure that you have that all written out. You give it to Sachin for proofing, and then you could just, broadcast it out and say, I've got it. I've merged UX, design thinking, design sprints. I've included Agile because I've collaborated with Yasir. And then I've also wrapped it up in a UCD kind of container, and I've got it completely down pat. And you can take this and you can apply it, and you're welcome. It's a Christmas gift.
Definitely, I'll definitely try to do that. But yeah, it's a long shot.
Well, I think it's important to just continue conversations in that space, so especially if you come across something either by someone's done or someone's written, and then give your understanding of what that is. Because when I was doing UX all the time, it was at the time, it was like a couple of decades ago when I was in UX, it was all about taking information architecture and usability and analytics and UCD and seeing how all of them come together and seeing what results happen, what relevance they had to actually the bottom line of a company, or how are users represented in the final product, if at all. And that's where I dwelled for a long time before I went into, I started getting more into like people management, servant leadership and stuff like that. So yeah, it's an ongoing discussion, and people are doing all sorts of really interesting work in that space.
Definitely.
Okay, cool. Now that we all know each other, we have about like a little bit, a quarter of an hour to kind of go into a few things. So I want to just review some of the things that happened in the first networking session and see if you have any reactions to them. So a couple of things that we talked about in the first one were, and I mentioned it briefly, were about sales for people that are entrepreneurs or small business owners that want to get out of their, what do you say, their structure of where they are, like the people that are in their network that all reflect what they do, like people who do design or do design sprints or workshopping or anything else. You kind of have that in your network and it reflects like your work, like everyone's kind of on the same page. Their challenge was to get out of that, to kind of and to do something besides cold calling, not necessarily just reaching out to people that they didn't know and saying, hey, are you interested in this? But finding ways of being able to connect to communities, other avenues of being able to expand, not only, letting people know what they're all about, but also, understanding what the market is asking for them. The other was employment. It was like a underlying thing about how people are going to find jobs after the pandemic's over or during the pandemic. There are some industries and some areas that are doing great and others that are just devastated. Like the service industry is completely, in the US anyway, it's completely like and in California, it's awful in some other places. But, and then there was also an idea that was offline about mini groups. So when we opened up the idea of networking every week for the GVDS so that people can optionally come to these things, there may be like mini groups of things where people have special interests around a certain topic, like UX or like the Dash and things like that. And so far, I shared a prototyping Slack in the last one with people that were interested in kind of having prototyping discussions. So I don't have like a this is what we'll do kind of thing, but on any of those topics between sales, employment, or mini groups, or maybe even like fractal pathing was another thing that was brought up. Is there anything that you want to bring up in terms of what you like to see kind of emphasized in the next GVDS that's coming up in October? Anything that you're expecting that by kind of getting into it, that's going to be different from your experience from last time? And anyone can kind of get on the horn and start talking, so you don't have to wait for me to call you. So this is a chance so you don't have to wait. You can actually speak right away. Who's going to take it?
Probably small networking session to understand each other, probably in a better way, because in general, most of the time we generally work, but if we have small networking session to know about interest, everybody can share their interest, everybody can probably, it's a kind of small 1 hour in a weekly session, networking session, open networking session, where people can talk to each other or something like that. Probably, I don't know, because that helps to understand each other in a better way.
So I was going to add something to that point, because what I've been thinking about with team formation is to start next week on that, meaning that if there's 20 signups right now after 1 week, which is that's well within the average of what it's supposed to be. But there's going to be certain people that are aligned in terms of time zone. So if I wanted to start the conversation of people that wanted to work with one another and not wait till I come out with something official, maybe it's exposing that information to just say, okay, Ken's in this region, this person's in this region. If we were to at least think about what people may have similar schedules, we could do that. Or I could go the route of doing the doodle again and basically saying, okay, out of your entire schedule for that first week, that 1 week, what does your availability look like, and go from there. And then the mural can reflect that, and then people can pick and choose what they'd like to kind of get involved with. So I can take a slight hands-on approach, or I can really curate it like last time, because the curation in the fourth one seemed to really hit home with everyone, because there was a lot of feedback around how great the teams were, how teams were something that really made the difference. And that was due to a lot of data analysis around scheduling, interest, roles, and making sure that people were working with the right people. So I can go either way, but does anyone have any thoughts on that?
I have sorry.
I'll just jump in, Sachin. And unfortunately, I don't have much to contribute here, because I like both approaches. It's nice to work with folks who are closer to your time zone. I mean, I know, when Nora and I are in the same team, I know that she and I can basically be available around the same times, because she's Bay Area and I'm Southern California. So on the other hand, I was always very pleased when the people on my team would end up being from outside of the US.
Okay.
And so when I hear you, Robert, say, I might just have a bias towards time zones, I feel like I might lose something if that's the case.
Okay.
And I know that doesn't make your job easier, but I'm just throwing that out there. Anyway, that's what I have to say about that.
Should it be more of an emphasis on availability than it's scheduling or time zones or anything else? Like, just basically take the availability as such, and if people are available at the same time, if they're night owls, then they go in that time. If they're early morning risers, then that's fine. And time zone doesn't really need to be an emphasis at all.
Well,
maybe that's it. Go ahead, Nora.
The times, no, it was great to work with you, Ken, and have us be in that similar space. But using WhatsApp allowed us to, and Slack allowed us to be more fluid. For me, with Femtech, I made my sprints in the afternoon, which allowed me to have people from Japan in my group, but it also then kicked out people from Europe, because it would have been in the middle of the night. So it's kind of, for me, I see this like either early morning and I have people from Europe in my group, or I can do later afternoon and have more people from like India and Japan and China working in that group. Middle of the day, it's kind of, I'd rather save for the contract work I'm doing and be able to take care of the things I need in my day to day. So that's kind of how I'm thinking of it. But I really like this idea of the networking piece, so we can meet each other beforehand and do some of that. I think, weren't you thinking of doing some LDJs and things beforehand to get these groups to kind of
gel together?
Yeah. So here's kind of like, I'm going to write this down so the loose framework so I don't forget it. So if I take what's been said so far, what it looks like is that we start off with a topic. So let's just say we've been talking about in the past couple of ones like sales. So we're going to do a sales related, let's say it's a sales related space. Like people are interested in this topic, but there's particular subtopics they may also want to kind of filter. If you gather people around the topic first, so that it's basically an interest there, then you could do one of two things. You could either form teams based on scheduling. So you go after schedule and you look at where people have alignment. And then if they have that same interest in terms of sales, then you kind of bring them together with 4 being the minimum, 8 being the maximum. So I'm kind of capping on both ends. Mm-hmm. If it hits that 4 to 8, then you use the LDJ as a way of networking, but also working together to see where you kind of go with things. And based on those initial ideas, that would set the in motion, like to kind of explore those topics, to figure out where things go, so that the modified design sprint you do will necessarily have to be where you interview subject matter experts right then and there. It depends on what offline work you can do up until you're going to do in the sprint. So to recap, it's basically center on the topic first of interest. So a topic of interest of some type. Then you go by schedule based on when people are available. And then you use what we did in GVDS 2 and 3, I believe, where you use an LDJ to bring people together that have that similar schedule and to start the discussion about the work early. And then people can get an idea of what they're interested in as a group. And then if there's something in that particular LDJ that someone says, no, that's not going the direction I want, then they can look at other results from other ones in that same space and say, this probably is more something that I'm interested in doing. So there's more of an emphasis in that process with topic or with subject matter, and then scheduling being the underpinning that brings everyone together. What's the reaction to that?
Yeah, I think so. That's a good idea. But when are you planning to do that? Because I think one of the observations that I had in GVDS 4 was, yes, we made the teams based on the availability. And then it was like just few days before the actual preparation week was supposed to start. And then what we realized was that people were not able to join in. And, our team, which was initially 8, then it shrank down to 5. And some people just disappeared. So I would say that the earlier that we can decide that, these are going to be the times and this is the topic, so that if people want to, make changes in the schedules and be available for it, they have enough time to do it.
Yeah, and for this one, it's just going to be one sprint. So you're going to basically you're not going to be jumping from one sprint to the next every week. It's structured so that the first week, if I'm just out of the top of my head, third week is the sprint. The second week is going to be like problem framing and learning that process. The first week is going to be kind of taking some it's a lot of offline time, but it's just doing research, having conversations, starting to get to know one another, and kind of going that route. I wouldn't necessarily couch the LGJ in that week because that might rush things. But the third week is when you actually do the sprint. The fourth week is an iteration sprint if you want to do it, or if you want to kind of expand on it. But the third week is in October is really when the actual work happens. 90 minutes online per day. WhatsApp can be used sparingly depending on if the team wants to have further discussions about the work, especially if it's designers and developers or anything else, however the team dynamic is. But you can pick and choose when you want to kind of get together on the side beyond the official schedule. And then the last week, which is off the books, is in November, is GVDS Showcase. So literally it's kind of putting everything in one compartmentalized thing. So we're not going to do like we're trying to do 4 or 5 sprints, like consecutive weeks, because that's like asking people who are somewhat in shape to run a triathlon and then break the world record for lifting weights and then provide dinner and accommodations for 150 people in an Indian wedding. So I don't want to have anybody go through that anymore.
There is no Indian wedding with 150 people only.
So there are thousand people required for a Indian wedding.
Yeah. Only the close
and the tents
relatives
in the
will be
soccer
150.
field and everything else where, yeah.
Robert, I think that'll allow for the cross-pollination that tried to happen, like all the people who are working in remote education, because you were doing a sprint this week and next week and the following week, you weren't able to really connect and cross-pollinate. So it might make some of the connections even stronger by us being able to connect with those other teams and find out what they're doing and share. I really like this focused way of one sprint, even though I joined like 3. one each week.
Yeah, I mean that was the norm before, and that was frenetic. But now I'm heeding the wisdom of Sandy Lamb and Lee Duncan, and a couple other people saying let's make this a actual like container structure so that there isn't this kind of mad dash to try to get everything and fill in, like check the boxes. So the other
we will not be able to join more than a sprint in that same week.
I wouldn't recommend it, but it depending on how like dedicated you want to be, there's the possibility of doing both a dash and a sprint. So if you want to, you can. I am not suggesting or encouraging that. I'm saying if you want to do one or the other, or if you want to do both, you can. But I am emphasizing balance this time around, and don't, because I was the poster boy for like, I can do everything on 4 hours of sleep per day and I'll be fine, until I almost suffered from exhaustion like week 3. And I thought, okay, if I'm suffering from this, then everybody else is like, they got steam coming out of their hair. So yeah, you can do that, yes, here, but I'm not going to basically say that should be the norm. One thing I'll say also is that I'm going to be teaching social media during the session, so that you'll be able to see what I do when it comes to broadcasting what I do in the GVDS, and the mechanisms I use, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Periscope, Reddit, all the different types, and as well as how you would properly communicate internally for that cross-pollination. So I want to bring that up, is that there's a good way to basically tell everyone what's going on in a way that's like cliff noted, but that people can actually like connect and make action, that I have used with the Usability Professionals Association, with UXPA, with other like other organizations that I've been part of the past. There's some metaphors that I've used in the past that I can share and see if they would make sense for other people to use. Okay. We only have a couple more minutes. Is there anything else that you want to mention about that you want to see in GVDS 5, or anything else at all you want to bring up before we close?
I would just like to reiterate whoever said something about, opportunities for socializing. Everyone's busy, and there's a lot to do during that month, and I understand it. But that's one of the things that I've enjoyed the most of these months, these two GVDSs that I've done, is getting to meet more people and spend more time with them, sometimes working on our challenge, but most times just hanging out. Like, I don't know if it was 3 that I did the life sprint with Rakesh and Matt, but that was one of the best experiences I had, because we got time to spend with people and kind of stretch out a little bit more. So any opportunities like that come up during the month, I will take them. So I'm just going to throw this out there.
So if I were to expand on that, what form would that take? Would that be just a conversation? Would that be a WhatsApp conversation? Would it be something like an app in Slack, what's like Donut, where you can basically get small groups together on the fly? I mean, what form would that take ideally that would work for you?
Any and all. I'm not a big fan of WhatsApp and just chat in general, but even just like happy hours, time zone happy hours or something like that, or socials where people can just bring their own beverage and or whatever, and just hang out with others who are involved and talk about how things are going, what you've learned, and then share experiences outside. those are the things that I remember getting a lot out of over the last 2 sprints that I've done.
We
Those
could
times
also
of-
use, sorry.
Go ahead, Yasir.
No, we could also use something like the lean coffee format, you know, where we get together, everyone, we collect the ideas, what you would like to talk about, and then, you know, take those topics, spend 5 minutes each, and then, you know, so it's more about generate ideas on what to talk about.
Yeah.
And can you repeat that first part? I didn't catch it.
It's called lean coffee format. It's a format
Okay.
where basically you come together, everyone puts the ideas or the topic they would like to talk about, people vote, and then you have a prioritized list of topics. Then you take the first one, you discuss it for 3 minutes, 4 minutes. Then at the end of it, everyone says whether they want to continue with it or no, let's move on to the next topic. And then so.
Can you send, if there's an article, can you send me a link so I can look at it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And would those, if we did have some sort of like these small social groups that would happen, is the expectation that it would happen just on Friday, or would it be better if they were kind of like measured out over like say 2 or 3 days, so you could have a, depending on when your schedule was, it could be more flexible for you?
I'd say spread out across the week. So if one worked better for your schedule, you could drop in.
Do you think it's too much of a stretch to ask people to volunteer for those? So if I'm not the person that's holding like coffee kind of talks, these lean coffee talks for like, if there were like say 7 or 8 of them across different time zones, would it be too much to ask like a GVDS alumni, if their schedule allows for it, if they had a format to run with, and if I got them, if they didn't have a Zoom account, basically I could provide them with one and they could hold their own. I mean, would that be desirable or interesting for anybody here?
Yes, and I volunteer.
Yeah, I also volunteer.
Okay. All right. So let me work on that this weekend then. Just so would you have your own account, or would you want me to provide you with one? Like a Zoom kind of like ID and everything?
I have my own.
So I would just have to check with you guys. Okay. And then just make sure that everyone knows that that individuals have volunteered to kind of do these small coffee chats so you get to know one another, and then just basically talk shop.
I think you could turn it over to whoever was running a particular, little coffee house, whatever you want to call it, and let them manage the agenda and the guest list and go from there.
The only requirement is you have to make up your own creative coffee shop name. Basically hold it. So you have a certain time. It's like, this is going to be Ken's Coffee
Klatch.
Yeah, there you go.
I've already done it. I'm good to go.
All right. And Ming Lee was actually somebody that was interested in doing something exactly like this. He was looking for a formal thing, but I think with the lean coffee format that Yasir had mentioned, I'm going to look into that. And what I'll do is I still have all the invites from this email. Over the weekend, I'll say, okay, here's the structure and the setup, and it will reflect on this conversation. But I'll go into like the cliff noted high level of what it is. And then if everything looks good, then we could just schedule those out and see where it makes sense for everybody.
Yep.
Okay. And then my job would be to market and volunteer it, making sure that it's posted where people can see it so that people want to get involved, they can.
Yep.
Thanks for the link. Yes, here, I'll go ahead and click that. All right. So we are over time. I know people. Oh, go ahead. What
sorry, one last question. Are you planning for having rotating facilitation opportunities, or is it similar to GVDS 4 where the facilitator will be decided and then you'll have a co-facilitator?
Part of that is going to be on the registration form when people tell me what they want to do as part of their role. And other times it'll be a group conversation where it's like, okay, can I also learn how to facilitate? So the reason why I'm going small group is that it gives more opportunity for people to try this, but also that I'm doing a bit of hand-holding by giving explicit instruction on how to facilitate each day of like the design sprint on the simulation side. So that's not just, okay, you're a facilitator, do everything like it kind of implied was before. This one's going to be very heavy on you're at this stage. Now, this is what you should probably do on the logistical side. And this is what you should do in terms of kind of managing things through. And here's an example of how to do that. So it's literally going to be me saying, here's how I do virtual sprints. And this is just the flavor of the coffee that I drink. See if it works for you and goes in that direction. And then take the experience of the people that have already done this, and they can also as well. So Abhinav, I know you need to go really fast. Let's do So the one thing we did last time as a sound off is to, instead of holding up a prop, is make a facial expression that reflects your mood going into the weekend. So you can smile, you can go like this, you can go like that. So I'm going to give you 3 seconds to kind of get it together, and I'll take a picture of whatever you got. So just basically have some sort of mood that you have, and then I'll take a picture. Are you ready? All right, 1, 2, and 3. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming by. I'll set everything up over the weekend. You'll be hearing from me soon. Thank Jesse for joining us very much, and hope you all have a good weekend, okay?